Welcome, Zoomers. Welcome you all to the world famous Sail Power Steam Museum. This is our 29th Zoom broadcast for the captain's quarters. And my gosh, this is some exciting night. We've got a wonderful program for you. Captain's quarters, number 29, down at the bottom. Of course, you all know those are the captains. Those are the captains of the Windjammer fleet here in Maine. And wonderful photograph of all these reputable, wonderful sea captains. They don't look very reputable in this photograph, but this is wintertime and they have to be kind of dolled up. Anyway, I've got a great program for you tonight. I want to tell you a little bit about how it all came to. This sailing business, it's kind of addictive. I started out many years ago in a little 20-foot knockabout sloop down in Toms River, New Jersey. And we sailed around until all of a sudden I felt this addiction get under my skin. And I just had to have a larger boat. Well, time went by. I started sailing on other people's boats, and I found the larger the boat, the more fun it was. And finally, I got a 44-foot Alden yawl Malabar and decided, well, I'm going to just change my whole life around. I'm going to get out of the business. I'm going to go and sail for the rest of my life. If I starve, so what? That'll be the way it is. So I went to the Bahamas, got in the charter business, and eventually came to Maine, where the old schooners are, the wonderful old schooners. And here was a whole fleet of commercial schooners, the kind of schooners they had back in the 1800s, the kind of schooners that we dwell on here at the world famous Sail Power Steam Museum. This is the Snow Shipyard, the site of the Snow Shipyard, right here in the heart of Rockland, where back in those days they built more vessels than anywhere else in Maine, anywhere else in most of New England. This was the hub of shipbuilding in the 19th century. Back 1800s, my God, the place was alive with shipbuilding there. And all of that got under my skin. Well, it's the same kind of thing all the way down through. So you better look out. If you see too many of these captain's quarters about all these sailing vessels, you may become addicted. So fair warning, because it has happened. Tonight, we have an incredible program for you, wonderful program. I'm going to start out by telling you a little bit about this addiction. Bob and Mary Rubadeau, my God, they got themselves a sailing vessel and they became addicted. Well, see what he has to say about it. Spent the last 40 years engaged in a smoldering love affair with boats. That's only confession about the addiction. And the wonderful way they infect people's soul. That's the addiction. So be careful what you watch tonight. This addiction has caused this poor soul, Captain Bob, to log over 150,000 sea miles during his career. Now, he's down that road. My God, it's the worst kind of drugs. It's more expensive than drugs, actually. But that's the way it is. And he's entertained people with his writings, telling about all of the crazy trouble people get in when they get into sailing boats. He knows it. He knows he's got this. He knows that he's lost completely. He cast his dock lines and said, all right, let's go around Cape Horn. Cape Horn. Nobody goes around Cape Horn for pleasure. That's like a bunion on your big toe. Nobody does that anymore. They've tried to do that over and over again, and it takes such a pasting around Cape Horn that they cut the continents in half and they built the Erie Canal so they didn't have to do that. But Bob and Mary, they turned around and they did that. So you're going to hear more and more about that as we go on tonight. But first, we have to go through the commercial. I know so many of you have seen this before. So many of you, this is, after all, so many of these captain's quarters things that I have to give a commercial each time. Well, the essence of sales is repetition. So don't throw your shoe through your internet screen here. Don't through your computer screen. That'll be too expensive. Just let me tell you quickly about the world famous Sail Power Steam Museum. This, of course, is the museum right here, the big building. We have it solid full of memorabilia. Our steam house is here where we have all our steam engines. Over here, we have the Dynamite Basin Chandlery, and that place is just loaded with stuff. What is this crazy looking thing here in front of us. This is a lime kiln. I mentioned it last time. The lime kiln, the lime industry was such an important part of Rockland back in those days. They shipped more lime out of Rockland and along with all the rest of the things back in the 1800s. Rockland was the fourth largest seaport in the United States. I told you that before, I know, but it's worth repeating. Fourth largest seaport, Boston, Philadelphia, New York, and Rockland, Maine. It was an amazing seaport back in those days. Now, right outside of town, they discovered this incredible deposit of limestone, pure, wonderful, prime limestone. They started to mine it. They brought it down to the waterfront and they would cook it in kilns. Well, limestone, they make cement out of, they make mortar out of, they make it building materials, and they're building New York and Philadelphia and all those places. And they needed this stuff down there in the cities as quick as they could get it. Well, they would bring it down to the waterfront here and they would put it in a kiln and they would burn it for 24 hours at 1800 degrees, and it would come out. The product that would come out the bottom of the kiln was called quick lime or hot lime, and it was a product that was very, very volatile. You put it in a barrel that leaks, and you put it aboard a vessel, and vessels all leak down through the deck and through the bottom. And the characteristic of hot lime is that if you mix it with a little water, it'll burst into flame. Oh my God, what a kind of a thing is this to carry in a wooden sailing vessel? But that's what they did. They burned up many a vessel. They turned around. They built more right here on the shores of Rockland. They built more vessels to carry more of this stuff down to the cities. Hot lime, quick lime for building material. It's so volatile. Just to give you an idea how volatile it is. You remember back in the old days, the cameramen, they had these great big old box cameras. They have a hood over their head like that, and they hold a T-shaped stick up, and that stick has quick lime on it, and they put a little spray of water on it, and you get that white light, and they take your picture in that white light, and that's where the expression came from, "You're in the limelight." Now you can take this little bit of trivia and you can use that the next time. Back to our beautiful museum here. Of course, people keep giving us things all the time. Back in 2019, they gave us a beautiful schooner. This wonderful schooner right here. It's made of furrow cement. It'll be right there forever. If you ever want to go sailing in it, all you have to do is dig it up, put it back overboard. The hull will never disintegrate. If that was a wooden vessel, it wouldn't last 10 years in that position. But here we go. You can take go up aboard that thing. You can go out on the end of the bowsprit, have your picture taken, go back by the wheel. I promise you, it won't make you seasick, and it won't sink from under you. Our museum, of course, we filled up by this time. We had to build a new museum. Here's our new museum here, new building. Just a couple of years ago, we finished it up. It's a wonderful museum, big museum. We have two great large, one steamboat, wonderful steam launch in there, 35 feet long. And we have the Light Horseman, which is the vessel that discovered Penobscot Bay, Weymouth's vessel. And she's 1605, a replica of that vessel. And we have a movie going on in Rockland, city of Rockland, lots of things. And I hope we'll have our big gift shop all prepared for this coming summer in that new building. People keep giving us things. Look over here on the lower left. The Morning in Maine. The Morning in Maine is a peat color design, beautiful ketch. And we sail that vessel all summer long. Every couple hours in and out of Rockland Harbor, you get two lighthouses for the price of one. Tyler Watterson, our captain on that vessel, he's a very charismatic guy, and he'll tell you all about the old days of sailing ships back in Rockland and the way it was back in those days. Well, let's flip the page here, and I get all giddy over this one. This is my skiff program. I just get all warm and fuzzy telling you about this. SKFF, Sail Kids for Free. We take these kids to try and spur their addiction. We take these kids from 8 to 14 years old, and we give them a free week-long sail training session, Monday right through Friday. They come out here. They don't know anything about a boat. You can see them down here up in the upper left. The little kids there, little tiny kids, 8 years old, 9 years, 10 years old, and they're learning how to set the sail. They're learning what a rudder is and what a centerboard does. And they get in these little boats, one guy to a boat. These are Optimus prams, international class prams, and they sail them around the harbor. We have a class of about 12, 14 boats and 12, 14 kids. They start out not knowing anything. They learn soak it up like a sponge. They get out there and they sail. Their buddies in the next boat. So right away, the competitive spirit takes over. They got to go faster than their buddy. So they do that. They take off. They go out there. If they can't beat their buddy, they run into him, whatever it takes. But after Friday comes along, they have been out there for a whole week learning. And here they are down in the lower left there at doing their race, the grand race on Friday, out around the buoys in Rockland Harbor. What a grand thing it is. These kids come out of there and they're just beaming, just so enthralled with the science of sailing. We also do adult sail training. We do all kinds of different boating, take people for sails. We have women on the water. We have special classes for the gals. We have 2 friendship sloops like this one here, and we have 2 Herreshoff 12 and a half, very classic vessel like this one on this side. Here's one of our friendship sloop with under sail. This is the Persistence, a Wilberforce design, wonderful friendship sloop, and we're taking people out, teaching them to sail. Of course, down here in the middle are the kids going around the buoys in the outer part of the harbor. Rent our tent. We have an enormous, beautiful tent right down on the waterfront down there. We do lobster bakes and we do all kinds of functions, weddings and receptions and musicals, all kinds of things. Great big tent. We can do dinners for 175 people, lobster dinners. Here they are. Here they are all having their lobsters, listening to a bluegrass band while they have their lobster lunch. It's really terrific. Here's our big steamboat that we have in our new building. And over here is Grandpa in the lower left. Grandpa's showing his grandchildren how to sail, teaching them how to sail in one of our boats. It is more fun than a barrel of monkeys watching them do their thing. We have a Sunday jam. I decided if we're going to have a museum, we have to have a lot of music. So every Sunday we decided to have a jam. That was 16 years ago. And every Sunday, summer and winter, we have, well, except for Christmas Day and Easter Sunday. We skip those 2 days, but all the rest of the year, we have a Sunday jam. This past Sunday, just yesterday, we had 20 musicians and a crowd of people singing the old songs like before television. We usually have between 15 and 25 musicians that show up every Sunday. Some do their own compositions, some do the old standards. But that's what we do on Sundays at the Grand Sail Power Steam Museum. Thank you very much. I want to tell you that we couldn't do it without you. Donations are encouraged, of course. Not only are they encouraged, but we'll keep reminding you. That's what we do. And we couldn't do it without you. Now we're going to let this over to Bob and Mary. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to head out and bring on Bob and Mary, and they're going to do the show tonight, and it's going to be a terrific show. Your watch, Bob. Carry on.
All right. Well, thank you, Jim, very much. I appreciate it. Tonight we have a unique opportunity to talk with all of you about how to tell stories. And most sailors will tell you that it's the epitome of having a good shipmate is someone that can tell you a good story. So tonight we'll share a few stories from our 57-year-old love affair with each other and the sailboats that have been lucky enough to include in our adventures. We are including videos of our own beloved Dog Star and the Maine coast, and also share visuals of our multi-year voyage to Cape Horn aboard Home Fleet, a Morris-built blue water veteran. I've published memoirs of each of these lovely ladies, and I'm sure that they'll be there at the museum right alongside of Jim's lovely manuscript of his own. The videos that we have included is, rather than take a look at our wrinkled faces, we thought that the videos would be something that you'd rather watch while we tell our stories. But they're not, the videos are not linked up or synced up to the stories as we're telling them, but they'll take you around the corn and take you through what we love of Maine. So our goal tonight is to give you some hints on the art of storytelling, and then we're going to share just 4 short examples from our own adventures. And then we'll open for questions. We appreciate the support of the Sail, Steam, and Power Museum. It is world famous, and we look forward to this opportunity to spend this time together. The art of telling stories. Telling stories as part of our human experience has become an educational tool since the very first campfire. We are 10 times more likely to remember a crucial fact of survival when we hear it inside of a story than if it is delivered as a simple fact of life. The history of humans gathering around the fire pit and sharing what is learned from their adventures is probably why evolution has worked so far for us naked apes so far. We have all learned critical, important, life-saving advice by finding the humor, decisive action, and lessons learned from many survival calamities as told through a storyteller. Language was surely invented just to tell most of us the most important stories necessary for survival. An essential offshore tool for any blue water sailor is a good story. The close quarters in the cockpit of a sailboat offshore is probably the perfect place to practice the art of sharing a life lesson. But even though you have a captive audience, you do your shipmates a favor by learning the guardrails of storytelling that should be in place before you command their attention. This evening, Mary and I will share a few of the proven strategies that veteran storytellers use to create and share essential components of a story, and offer you some ideas on how to hone and practice your own skills whenever you can.
So let's start with, what are the key ingredients of a good story? The path from beginning to end of a good story needs structure, discipline, engagement, details, timing, and an easily understood message. The successful storyteller delivers to the audience 5 essential ingredients. First, make me care about the people involved in the promise of the story's intended takeaway or lesson. Second, give me a shared problem, understood by your audience, that needs to be resolved within the short span of a story. Third, take me on a personal journey the players make to find the resolution or answer within the tight bookends of the experience. Then, surprise me with the aha moment of the tale that I might not expect. Finally, leave me with a crystal clear lesson I can use in my own navigation of a similar or related experience down the line. There are so many successful techniques used in telling a good story. In a cockpit at sea, you cannot hide from your audience's judgment, so practice beforehand. We all appreciate an entertaining message. The entire storytelling experience is designed to bring a warm smile of camaraderie for a shared journey. We're going to share 4 brief stories this evening. These anecdotes span the 5 decades of our ongoing love affair, and we'll share some of the adventures and surprises we've experienced in our global travels. The first story is titled Pirates Off the Coast of Colombia.
Our Cape Horn crew included a rotating roster of sailors. Home Freeze owner Bob Trenery and Newport Jim Stanek are aboard for this part of the adventure. The Los Perlos Islands are a part of Panama, 40 miles off the Pacific coast and largely undeveloped. Colombia is just over the horizon. After leaving the Panama Canal behind, we made landfall on the island chain and began searching in the guidebook for a place to put down the hook. This could be the place, I said, pointing to a highlighted section of the beachfront Panama cruising guide with a lagoon-sized anchorage showing 2 beachfront bars. They were pinpointed with martini glasses. Let's anchor out, said Trenery from the helm. Outer the better, said Jim. I got my fill of crowds in Panama City. It's a nude beach, I said in a large stage whisper. Okay, we're in, said the two in a quick synced chorus. Sailing men of a certain vintage are often predictable. And we'll anchor far enough in to be an embarrassment. My eyesight ain't that good anymore, said Jim. The inner the better, climbed Trenery. It's always amazed me how quickly innocent fun can get you into all sorts of big trouble. Adjusting course, we noticed a rapidly moving, intimidating black smudge racing around the distant island, throwing a huge rooster tail in a long arc that curved inevitably toward our boat. My spinning slot machine of a mind came up with 3 bones, 3 skulls and the crossbones. Pirates? They've got guns, Trenery said as he dropped the binoculars back into their holder. He gunned the engine. The 30-foot rigid inflatable was beelining straight for us at high speed. Looks like they mean business, I said. We noted the 6 men in tactical black vests, all crowded behind their chest-high bulletproof steering pedestal. Each of the crew carried an assault weapon slung across their chest. We were in for it. Options were between few and none. What now? Asked Trenery. Slow down, I said. This is your best advice with bloodthirsty pirates on the loose? Try to be polite, I said. Polite? While they gun us down in cold blood, growled my shipmates. Best to do the politeness thing sometime before the shooting starts, I said, wishing I was anywhere else but here. The speeding war machine inflatable went quickly from full bore down to our sailboat's crawling gait, deftly matching our speed as it came alongside, 10 feet apart. No one aboard either boat was smiling, except me. I stood and waved both hands over my head to show I was unarmed and obviously harmless. And I hope too pitiful and scared to waste any live ammunition on. My garish forced grin must have got their attention. They barked back at me in a tumble of quick Spanish as I presented myself for their target practice on the wrong side of Humphrey's hard dodger. My silent response was hunched shoulders and palms up. A burly guy in a black tactical gear held his assault weapon tight across his chest, index finger pointing down the barrel. He yelled another undecipherable flood of almost recognizable words at me once again. He sounded like a Marine drill sergeant, but I think he ended the yelling with a question, so I jumped in. ¿Dónde está la playa nudista? I asked sheepishly. My armed interrogator squinted hard at me and then made me repeat what I had just said, twice. Translated, I was asking for directions to the nude beach. I wasn't totally sure that the questioning look from the patrol boat wasn't even more hostile after that. He turned and spoke with the boat driver, came back at me in more Spanish, and I only caught the last words, which were, ¿Desnudo está aquí? He asked, then gathered me a verbal flood of more Spanish. I tried a new tack away from the nude beach stuff by asking the pirate for mercy and world peace. Sí, venimos en pedazos. I found later my lame Spanish translated to, we come in pieces. Eso es muy malo, the pirate finally said and tapped the side of his temple. I knew malo meant something bad, and I was sure I had probably just insulted our soon-to-be assassin's mother or girlfriend. No, so muela. Por favor, I crossed myself for no good reason. Soy. I couldn't think of the words for sorry, innocent, or willing to leave without bleeding. Loco, the pirate finally helped out. I knew that meant crazy, and suddenly I relaxed. So did his trigger finger. He knew me. I was crazy enough to be on deck at gunpoint while the rest of the crew ducked behind cover. It seemed my reputation as a harmless idiot preceded me, or more likely his astute observation of my frozen-in-place clown smile did the trick. Who shoots dimwits? Desnudo y loca, he said. I got the armed soldier to crack a smile right back at me. Everyone finally relaxed. Admitting to both the nude beach search and being a wee bit crazy makes me a true kindred spirit with sailors of all nationalities. Over the next 15 minutes of pantomime and slow clarifications, one concept at a time, we came to the conclusion that the gunboat was acting as a well-armed security for the hit reality TV show Survivor, which was being filmed on the very next island up the chain. In the midst of the contestants' privations and competitions, it would destroy the horizon's panorama if $1 million pleasure yacht and 3 spry butt-aging gentlemen were cavorting, dining, and showering off the stern in full view of the cameras, not in the script. Our armed escort, now all smiles at the jokes at our expense, directed us to follow them to a nice little anchorage in a protected crook of sand on another small island called Pachica. No one argues with a tour guide brandishing an assault weapon. What was the lesson we learned from this encounter? Always be prepared for the totally unexpected and try a smile when all else fails. I quickly applied myself with renewed vigor to stretch my Spanish language capabilities, especially in the apologizing and fawning for your life departments. Cape Horn was still 5,000 miles away.
The next story takes us back to recounting our first date.
Fear is a powerful emotion. Terror is the primal territory designed for paying attention. Our ancestors, the naked apes, told stories illustrated with cave paintings and were likely about not becoming someone's dinner. The learning curve when faced with terror is steep. Have you ever waged your courage against an unforgettable panic moment when everything you thought you were or could be as a person was on the line? Leaping into the void was demanded. You could be safe if you did nothing. What choice would you make? I met Mary the day after she graduated from high school in 1967, while we were earning $1.90 an hour as Syracuse lifeguards. We were introduced wearing skimpy Speedo swimsuits, so you know where my mind was as we shivered together in the early morning chills at our pool. As our friendship grew in those early days, we slowly opened our private worlds and dreams to each other. Mary taught me to ride a horse. I taught her that inner city tall chain link fences were only a restrictive suggestion not meant for those who climb. Laughter, endless chatter, and holding hands was always its own reward. We always had too much to say, never enough time to spend together and figure it all out. Time apart seemed hollow.
We were brokering our scant life experiences into the new uncharted territory of being in love. Our friendship grew with rotating lifeguard chairs, long walks along city streets, and horseback rides in rolling fields on my family's dairy farm. We submerged ourselves in long hours of lying on our backs and talking wildly of life's endless parade of miracles that were surely just around the bend. And then we decided to jump out of an airplane.
Mary and I stood on the airport tarmac feeling defeated. We stepped outside of the office to the skydiving school at the airport in Greene, New York in 1967. While we were filling out the paperwork and the accidental death liability release forms to begin the process of making our first parachuting jump, Mary had correctly entered her age as 17 on the registration form. The dive instructor frowned. He was limping due to a recent inadvertent accident while landing. Not the best resume for an instructor. He handed Mary back her paperwork with a smile and a wink. He offered no advice on how to get around having to locate a parent to sign the permission waiver. We walked outside to discuss a new plan. The thrill of plunging out of an airplane and surviving had all the hallmarks of a brilliant idea when the caper was hatched during a rain-swept afternoon hiding in the damp locker room at the pool the week before. We both admitted to the other that for some unknown reason, most heights scared us silly. And the only way to rid ourselves of that latent boogeyman was to jump out of an airplane.
You can't do that, I said when he snatched the paper from my hand and raised a pen to fill the blank spot on the parental signature line.
Oh, yes, I can. I know how to spell it. Trust me.
You're going to get me into some kind of real trouble.
It's my middle name.
I gave him my best schoolmarm's scolding stare. It always worked perfectly on the stubborn dairy cows at milking time.
Who's going to care?
Really? We'll never get away with it.
It's just a name.
But it's my father's name.
Richard, right?
I tried looking serious before finally admitting to myself, what the hell? And broke into a resigned smile. You don't look like the Richard.
Humor me. I'll get better looking as I age.
It was the start of a long, slippery slope.
I quickly signed her father's name and handed the paperwork over the counter to Limp without a word. It was the very first time Mary had ever ventured off the reservation of the straight and narrow on her own accord. The future guardrails of our shared possibilities were constantly being examined and redefined, but the process was never predictable nor under any semblance of our control. Family and friends often refer to this often told anecdote from our past as the Svengali-style mutual suicide pact with the devil. We began our own approaches to what was to come later with that forged signature. When courting true love, rules were optional. The suicide pact so far, after better than 5 decades, has not been resolved.
The limping instructor led the way to the gear shed for our chutes. We followed, holding on tight to each other with sweaty hands.
When the door to the airplane opened at 5,000 feet, I later wrote that I managed to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. I'm guilty, but I should be pointed out in my defense that neither of us had ever been in any type of flying machine before. We had never seen the world spread out below from anything higher than a 10-story building downtown or a tall corn silo. It was a terminal vertigo scenario. Imagine facing your first taxi and takeoff ever when you know you'll never land the plane.
Instructor Limp was a veteran of many first jumps. He knew that it was often an unpredictable flip of the coin if students will actually face their deepest fears and muster the courage to take that last long step. With only 2 divers in the queue, the instructor had a 50-50 shot of possibly getting it right. He had seen it all go wrong many times before. Nudge the wrong student to the door first, and panic becomes a viral infectious disease that could ruin everyone's chances of taking the plunge. Limp sought to make eye contact with each of us to help him make his Hansel or Gretel decision.
I will lament for the remainder of my life that I had the perfect chance for an "aw shucks, let me go first, sweetheart" quip. I will always regret not spouting that Jimmy Stewart line. That didn't happen. A young man rarely forgets those dark, embarrassing admissions that forged their thinking about themselves long after the facts are lost to others. We finally made it to jump altitude, and Limp was still unsure of what would happen next. Mary gave me an understanding smile and a nervous wink.
I marshaled my panic the same way I did when facing a 5-foot fence on the back of a powerful and excited horse, and proceeded to squirm across the floor like an inchworm moving towards the open door. I needed to get this jump over as quickly as possible, and shouting over the roar of engines, I asked our instructor, "Ladies first?" Limp smiled warmly for being let off the hook and made fast my static line, checked my harness clips, and gave a big thumbs up. I swung my feet out into the slipstream and pulled myself out and up the door. Holding the wing strut, the wind made my cheeks flap while I faced the next step. I took it.
It was one of the bravest things I had ever seen. When Mary let go the strut, crossed her arms to her chest, and fell backwards towards the ground, my heart stopped. Panic stepped up front and center. It felt as if my adolescent manhood and teenage expectation of the hero I thought I was and wanted to be were ripped painfully from my chest. Something else took control of the chaos in my head. What drove this panic attack was my startling realization that my whole future life was falling away from me towards the ground at 126 miles an hour. Unless I could keep up with this remarkable woman, I would forever regret following a second-rate path that didn't have her in it.
I'm not sure that skydiving should be everyone's solution to having an irrational fear of heights, but we embrace the challenge, and in the years to come, we continue to enjoy the sport and celebrated an emerging life on mountains by climbing, skiing, and scrambling among the peaks in the Alps, Nepal, Alaska, and of course, our Colorado Rockies. Ladies first became our frequently used mantra whenever the next step into thin air required a firm focus, a brave front, and a gut check. And in his defense, Bob was the lady at least half the time. We have remained in love with each other and the never-ending adventure of scaring ourselves silly in the pursuit of having fun.
The next tale is about our first trip to Roque Island. It happened in 1987.
It's called
The First Cruise Down East.
The first time Dog Star cruised to Maine with a young Rubadeau family aboard, Ronald Reagan was our president. Our daughter Sky was an energetic, smart aleck E7, and our son Tristan a precocious 3. It was 55 tough miles up the coast from Mount Desert Island to the holy grail of all New England cruisers worth their salt, Roque Island.
As we passed Seahorse Ledge approaching Great Roque Island, I first noticed the thick vertical wall of sea level cloud advancing toward us from the general direction of the Bay of Fundy. It looked like the end of the world as we know it. We soon realized fog as thick as felt cotton candy was on its way. This was definitely not a good thing. Dogstar in the 1980s was a well-fitted boat. In addition to the basis of a good compass swung twice every year, our aids to navigation were a digital depth sounder, a speed log, a foghorn, and a collection of full-size paper charts. Dogstar knows that nigh on impossible to outrun or outguess a bank of fog, and that day we didn't even try. Nothing brings out the cold sweat terrors like being lost in the fog with young children, fundy tides, raising wind, sinking sun, no radar, and paper charts. I shudder now, even thinking about it as a distant memory. Luckily, this wasn't our first rodeo with this kind of showdown, and it never gets any less stressful.
As Bob searched the chart for a safe refuge, I point the bow for the lighthouse, knowing that just beyond that point was a narrow entrance to a channel that circled behind the island and provided a protected anchorage. It was a tight, hard-to-find entrance rimmed in rocks and ledges. With the bowsprit pointed directly at Moose Peak Light, I read off the compass course. The captain marks it down and slides with parallel rulers along the chart and makes a light pencil line back to our position off the ledge. Measuring the line with brass dividers, we have 4.2 nautical miles to go to our entrance. I continue to check the telltale lobster buoys to give us a rough angle on the strength of the tide by the wakes they're trailing and how the current is lining up to affect our ability to hold a straight line to the mark.
This pact with the devil of using unconnected puzzle pieces of information to navigate a vessel through a labyrinth of maneuvers to arrive in safety at a harbor of your choosing is rightly and morbidly called dead reckoning. In my experience, this exercise is simply Neptune's scorecard for those who fail to pass the test. The raw numbers of tidal range, wind, speed over ground, current direction are the hard facts. The relationship they have with each other are the fickle menagerie of an ingredient of a pot of stone soup. Our chances of pulling this off is all about guesswork, ample safety margin, and hard-won experience that is best described as hopeful hunches.
The distant lighthouse disappears in a snap of your fingers before a heavy wall of white, and 10 minutes later, our bowsprit vanished as well. We were in for it now. We check our watches every 30 seconds before we agree that we have possibly arrived at where we had guessed we might be, but nothing visible gives us a small hint that we are anywhere near our goal. The loud, mournful wail of the lighthouse's double baritone horn every few minutes is not reassuring. The horn's sound could be anywhere within 100 compass degrees off our port side. We slow the boat to a crawl and think this over. The rocky shores are granite ledges, steep too, with little warning or space between 50 feet of depth and none at all. According to the chart, we're looking for Maine Channel Way, a sliver of a break in the cliffs that is barely 50 feet wide. We talked in hushed tones about moving the boat offshore for the next 12 hours and doing night watches while hove to as the only possible plan B. Skye reads Tristan a children's book about Andre the famous seal in the warm, cozy cabin as we tried to figure out the next right step. The fog didn't seem to scale up at all as we closed the dangerous shoreline. Visibility, as I stood at the bowsprit, was less than 15 feet, and 3 times in a row, my heart leapt in my chest as I spotted solid rock and splashing waves dead ahead. We backed away each time to try our luck again, 20 yards to the east. We were running out of daylight. Slow ahead, starboard 10 degrees, I call out to Bob. The foghorn taps twice. It sounds as if it's close enough to reach out and touch. The captain repeats the course suggestion back to me, and I know we're working together. 10 degrees in a blank wall of fog with rocks around is either too much, too little, or it makes absolutely no difference at all. We had to wait and see. I peeled back my eyes even more to see even less in the damp, swirling goop.
Hey, you folks be all right?
I nearly startled myself right off the bowsprit. I grabbed the forestay to stay on board. My head swiveled in all directions. None held any talking heads. I heard Bob call out 50-foot depth line from the instruments back at the helm.
It's a mite thick,
said the calm voice rolling out of the midst. Try as I might, I couldn't say from which side of the boat the voice was on. I expected to hear the low, muted tide of an engine somewhere close aboard. I didn't. I must be hallucinating under the stress.
It gets a little better inside. Stay on your line.
The voice offered advice, but again, no real clue to its origin. Why don't I hear his engine?
Favor the starboard.
Was the last thing I heard from astern. A huge gull paddled madly to get out of the way of our bow as we inched forward at a baby's crawl. My head and gaze were in constant anxious search. Where? What? Who? The foghorn tapped out a hopeful two-tone again. It sounded as if the lighthouse was mounted to our masthead. The gull frantically scudded ahead and, still losing ground to our bow wave, gave up his swimming escape plan and spread its wings. I could see it take off, surging ahead between two suddenly emerging tall, dark walls of slime-streaked granite and scraggly pines. I could surprisingly still see the low skimming bird leading the way ahead as the fog gently, magically began lifting off the water and the entrance opened up around us. The land-based cloud elevated skyward like a slowly rising show curtain. We had finally found our own safe peekaboo hole in the midst. Thanks, I called out behind me into the fog.
Hey, you're really welcome,
said Bob with a surprised laughing snort from the tiller. Bob claims never to have heard the phantom voice that helped us find our way out of that ghastly pickle. Each year we tip our hats to our unknown guide as we traverse this section of coastline. Finding the place called Mistake Harbor was simply plain magic with ghostly voices in the midst.
The last story we're going to tell is about the goal of rounding Cape Horn after an 8,000-mile voyage. 3 of us were aboard again, Captain Trenery, John Hallquist, and myself. We call it knockdown at Cape Horn. You would think we'd know better. With all the years and miles the 3 of us aboard have tucked under our belts, looking over the front end of a boat, it never occurred to any of us at this fateful morning that wind at sea is at best a fickle, unreliable partner who runs the gamut of encounters from welcome benefactor to wrecking ball. We were within striking distance of Cape Horn and sailing along in 20 knots of wind with a single reef in the main and a full Genoa pulling us through a steady breeze just forward of the beam. We were doing nearly 9 knots and 20 knots of wind. The sun was shining, the decks were dry. We ran south under a cloudless sky. This was Buzzard Bay style sailing on a Sunday afternoon. Are you kidding me? This can't really be happening, I thought. When the predictable end of this dream sail came, it was sharp, brutal, and immediate. It was also all of our own fault. Let me take you back a few hours and set the stage. Trenery John and I were lounging in the cockpit. Our lizard brains were wrestling with those boiling pots of mixed emotions swirling around home free at the end of something important. We were tempting fate by letting a torrent of words tumble from our mouths before we thought about them and without weighing the downstream consequence of being so darn pleased with ourselves. Trenery did his best to stop this avoidable cosmic train wreck. Fat chance anyone's going to believe this kind of day at the Horn, said John. Got to be 1 in a million days, said I. Stop, said the captain in his best loud curmudgeon-y voice. You're not enjoying this day? John asked. Don't jinx it. Just shut up about it. I want to get this whole crazy once-in-a-lifetime scene just right, I said. How beautiful rare is this? Like maybe never. Only thing missing is cold beer, a grill, and sunscreen. You're doing your best to kill it. Kill what? Asked John, looking around for an answer. Kill it dead. Who? What? Why? John asked, obviously confused. Certain crew members, said Trenery, pointing at me and giving me the evil snake eye for not seeing the danger ahead, or seeing it and seriously tempting the fates to give us a comeuppance. For what? Said John. He wasn't letting it go. For jinxing it. Jinxing what? This. Trenery waved his arm at the whole scene off our bow. Patagonia? Isle of Deceit? The Horn? Asked John. No, said the captain with a low growl. Just having this good a day, John. Well, have a good a day yourself, said John, still puzzled, but always the gentleman. Trenery gave me a slumped-shouldered shrug of defeat and stared up into the blue heavens for guidance, and, wishing for the righteous thunderbolt I certainly deserved. You can't kill something by just talking about it, I said. Trenery covered his ears in defense. The sleigh ride continued like a looped video. In an hour, we were putting Wollaston Island in our rearview mirror and driving straight towards Paso Bravo and Isla Herschel. According to our Italian pen cruising guide, this was a notorious route in southwest winds, much like the ones we were having today. And the legendary stories of dramatic willowaws grow with each boat's telling. We stood by sheets, furling lines, and winches as the tight pass gradually closed in around us. We were still sailing like a racehorse, tempting fate. Then the dangerous narrow challenge was over. The end of the tunnel appeared ahead. Everything opened up. We eased the sheets and ran down the coast of Herschel Island directly towards Isla Deceit, looking for the still hidden entrance to Paso del Mar. Isla Deceit was a perfect cast character on this stage, sharp-sided and angled, off to a flat mesa on top, with nothing behind it but the brutal open sky, the Drake Passage, and finally, Antarctica. Isla Deceit was really something else. It made the hair on my neck stand up and be noticed. The Roque Island had some bad juju going. An age-worn and imposing marker stone for all of the souls buried deep within these waters. We watched in stunned silence, transfixed for a long 5 minutes, when an angry and aggressive foaming layer of bleached white clouds suddenly appeared on the horizon and crawled up over the flat-topped mountain and spilled down the 800 vertical feet, flat like a falling wave. Suddenly, the white caps at the water's edge were flattened into a spray and spume. A 20-foot-tall boiling cloud of mist pushed ahead off the thick white vaporous sheet as it actually moved upwind of the tall, choppy waves rolling down through the pass. It came towards us fast. Looking back on our reaction to this train wreck, it was like we were primitive natives on a beach watching a towering tidal wave arriving to engulf our little atoll and everything living on it. We were frozen in place. On it came. What the? John began, but never finished. We were all in action in a brief nanosecond before an expletive was ripped out of the captain's mouth and the boat was pushed down onto her side in a sudden vicious assault. The world, tilted under her sails, were flat in the water, and the top of the mast was downhill from my perch, hugging tight to a sheet winch in the cockpit for dear life. The sound of the wind was a deafening roar of a hungry beast. We were dead in the water, tangled in a headlock by this frontal assault. The ferocious wind then caught the underside of the hull and pushed her entire tonnage with the masthead leading the way into the base of the next wave. I watched as solid water came up over the cockpit combing and then spill out of our boat as our boat suddenly exploded like a freed and branded horse, almost jumping straight up onto her feet. The wind tried to knock her over again, but she kept her skirts on the next wave assault, and we began to slide slowly forward. She clawed her way up through 100 degrees, rolling and spinning upwind. We were all judiciously loosening sheets and freeing up the sails to find the key to the swirling wind holding us over. Trenery caught my eye while clutching the wheel and did his eyebrow twitching thing over a sheepish, anxious smile. I hate it when he's right. And now I'd have to tell him how right he was about the jinxing it thing every hour or so until sometime next year. It was a mad scramble to stabilize the boat once she was on her feet. working against the roaring gusts from all directions, getting the sails dragged down or wound up, checking for any damage on deck, getting our heart rates back under control, and finally putting sails back up into operation as the wind gradually eased down from 50 to 30 to 20 over the next 10 to 20 minutes. When we could finally look up from the essential boating tasks and check our bearings, we all stopped and gaped. Peeking around behind Double Point, under a crisp blue sky on Herschel Island, was the matron we had all come to honor. There she was, Cabo de Hornos. Hope you enjoyed these tales from our life together. Now we'll just stop and clear our screens and open for questions.
That was awesome, you guys. Thank you. The video was wonderful too. I hope everybody was enjoying watching that in the background. Any questions? Jim, how about you? You are a fellow storyteller extraordinaire. You're muted. You need to unmute. Jim, you're muted. Usually down in the bottom left.
Go.
There we go.
Always something. Oh, I'm so scared with what he just told. It takes me aback.
Yeah, we didn't survive. That was the end of the story.
Yeah. Well, my God, I got to hand it to you. Cape Horn, he just turned around and figured, you optimistic sailors, I'm going to teach you a lesson.
Oh,
Gave
yeah.
you a little slap with the back of his hand, didn't he?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, let's get back to my screen here. How do I get back to my screen? Now, there we are.
Questions?
I think. We back there, Robin?
Nope, it's not up yet.
If you have any questions they'd like to ask, I see some great friends out there. And
Thanks for tuning in.
thanks for tuning in. We appreciate the encouragement.
So I'm wondering how many people do that voyage around the Cape Horn?
You know, I don't know how many, but
Or
under your own sailboat, I'll tell you that probably less people have done it around Cape Horn with a boat than have been on the top of Mount Everest.
because I heard that that was one of the hairiest sails there is right around that horn.
It gets gnarly. That's
We had a speaker last summer come and talk about going around Cape Horn historically. And it can sometimes take people 3 months to get past it because you start going through and then you get blown back and you keep going back, and it would take months for people to be able to get through there. So it's not even just about being a hairy trip traveling through there. You get to do it over and over and over again. It's like Groundhog Day.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes the square riggers got so frustrated by not being able to, to make any westing that they turned around and sailed all the way across the Southern Ocean past Australia to get up to the tea in China. So it was pretty amazing.
Yep.
Is there like a log book of people that have done it?
Probably not. There's no place to punch your ticket when you're down there. And I think a lot of people, may claim that they've been around there. And I always say, well, if you don't have white hair, you've not been around Cape Horn.
Yeah, we want to introduce our son Tristan too.
Yeah, Tristan's down here. He's on board.
Yeah, he was on a lot of these adventures and of course, going to mistake.
This is true. Yeah.
Yeah, we want to hear from Tristan what he thought of all his sailing adventures with you.
Good idea.
Putting him on the spot.
Certainly. I've learned by example how to tell great stories over the years. I've heard a lot of these several times. Like any good sailing stories, a lot of them get bigger over time, which I love to hear.
Jim's favorite line. Jim didn't really introduce himself. I'm Robin McIntosh with the museum, but Jim and Meg are in the background there. Jim was introduced, and they're the co-founders of the museum. Jim Sharp, Captain Jim Sharp, and Meg, his wife. And Jim is a great story, and as Bob alluded to, he has a wonderful book out as well, and he's a great storyteller. And as he says, sometimes they're even true. That's kind of what you were just saying, Tristan. The stories change over time.
Well, now, can I get back on here? Am I back on there now?
You are, Jim?
Yes, you are. You need to
we
minimize
go.
that screen. There you go.
There, well, gosh. That was really great. That was really incredible, wasn't it? I want to thank you very much, Bob and Mary. I think that was fabulous. And all of these programs that we have, we couldn't do it without all you guys. I want to just tell you that a number of wonderful programs we've had in the past. We've done so many different vessels, all the Arctic schooner Bowden, the Roseway, the Victory Chimes, the Ladona. We've done tugboats and cooks. We've done all kinds of different programs. And now we go on after all of those. They're all on YouTube. And after all of those, we have the ones that we've done just lately in 2024. Just finished up Bob Trapani, the photographer, on the lighthouses along the Maine coast. And now, of course, this one, Bound for Cape Horn. This is one we'll remember for a long time. Roque Island's quite beautiful, too. I've been there. Both my wife and I have cruised all along the coast, Nova Scotia coast and so on. And done thousands and thousands of miles all around the coast of Maine and the Great Loop, and over in France. We've done Europe and gone around the world in an old Russian ship. So we've got quite a lot of miles under us, but I take my hat off to you, Bob. You've certainly done a great job. 150,000 miles. I'll bet you've loved every bit of it, huh? Well, if you get bored and get tired and don't know what to do, grab a copy of my book. Come down to the museum and I'll give you a copy of my book for free for a $100 donation. Of course, you can buy it for $25 if you want to, but well, I won't tell you about that. But anyway, tells about my career and 40 years of voyaging, and my beautiful wife here alongside me, and tells about how we got married and all the wonderful things we've done together, cruising, and it's grand life. I gotta admit, it's been quite a wonderful ride. Well, reckless abandon, and most of it's true. I do tell people that. So, want to thank you again. Tell you again, we can't do it without you. Both our skiff programs and all the rest of the wonderful things we do here at the museum.
Jim, we want to thank you, Mary and I, and for all that you do. I mean, we've been in the museum for a number of years, always being in Rockland. We would take our walk out there. It's a great dog walk, good place to be, and you've always welcomed us with open arms. And for anybody that wants to look at a couple of my memoirs alongside of Jim's, we're going to send a box of books to Jim to as a donation to the museum, and then he can charge $200 for his book, my book, and we'll sign them.
Thank you. Well, very generous of you, very kind of you, Baji. We'll put them together. We'll really make some money with it then, won't we?
There you go. Right.